I want you to just picture a scenario for a second. You're 77 years old.
Right?
You've had a long career, some wins, some losses, but you are definitely in your, twilight years. Most people are thinking about golf.
Or grandkids. It's the time of life where you're supposed to be winding down, safe, quiet.
Right. But imagine if, at age 77, you woke up and just said, you know what? I think I'm going to start a brand new company.
Okay.
And not just some hobby business. I'm going to start something that will completely wreck the competition and make me a billionaire.
It sounds like a movie pitch, one that would get rejected for being too unrealistic.
Yeah.
That is exactly what happened.
Today, we are doing a deep dive into the life of Sidney Frank. And honestly, when I first saw this name in our stack of sources, I thought, okay, another business biography. But this is not just a story about a guy who got rich.
No, it's really a story about human psychology.
It is. We are going to unpack how a poor farm boy eventually changed the entire alcohol industry. And he didn't do it by inventing a better tasting drink. He did it by understanding this glitch in the human brain about how we perceive value.
That's the core mission of this deep dive. We're drawing from biographies and business analyses of Frank's life to show you that value isn't always about the product. Sometimes it's entirely about the story you tell and the price tag.
So if you've ever bought something just because it was expensive and you just assumed that meant it was better, you are going to want to listen to this.
Oh, yeah.
Because Sidney Frank saw you coming a mile away.
He certainly did.
But let's not jump to the billions just yet. We have to rewind. Because Sidney Frank did not start out as some titan of industry. The sources describe his start as, well, pretty rough.
Rough is a polite way to put it. He was born in 1919 in Connecticut, but not the fancy part of Connecticut. He was a farm boy. His family was, just scratching out a living. This is not old money. This was no money.
And there's this one detail about his education that really sets the stage for his ambition. He manages to get into Brown University.
Which is huge. An Ivy League school in the late 30s. For a farm kid, that tells you he was incredibly bright.
But then the reality check hits.
He lasts 1 year. He had to drop out because he couldn't afford the tuition. And I think that's a really crucial psychological moment for him. Imagine being smart enough to be in the room, but too poor to stay in the seat.
That has to leave a chip on your shoulder. You know you belong there, but your bank account says you don't.
Precisely. So he leaves, and then history intervenes. World War II breaks out. Frank goes to work in an engine factory. He's basically a mechanic, contributing to the war effort. It's gritty, blue-collar work.
So how do we get from an engine factory to the high-end spirits world? I mean, did he just stumble into a bar and have an epiphany?
Not exactly. He stumbled into a relationship. He met a woman named Louise Rosenstiel.
Okay, the name rings a bell, but help me out.
Louise was the daughter of Louis Rosenstiel, who owned Shelley Industries. At the time, Shelley was one of the biggest distillers in the entire country.
Oh, so he married the boss's daughter.
In a way, yeah. But it wasn't just a free ride. By marrying into the family, he got access. He saw the inner workings of the industry. He wasn't just sitting by the pool, he was learning the supply chain, learning distribution. He spent years watching how liquor moves from a factory into a glass.
So it was an apprenticeship.
A very, very high-level one. But eventually, things got rocky with the in-laws, family dynamics can be complicated, and decades later, we're skipping ahead a bit here, he decides he needs to be his own boss. He starts a distribution company in New York.
And this is where the story gets really fun. Because his first big hit wasn't vodka. It was something that brings back some very hazy, sticky memories for me.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Jägermeister.
The one and only.
Now wait, Jägermeister is, well, it's an herbal liqueur. It tastes like licorice and cough syrup had a baby.
Yeah.
How on earth did he look at that German drink and think, this is going to be a hit in America?
That's the brilliance of Sidney Frank. In the early 70s, he starts importing it, and you're right, the taste was a barrier. It wasn't sweet, it wasn't smooth, it was aggressive.
So what do you do when your product tastes like medicine?
You lean into it, but more importantly, you stop trying to sell the taste and you start selling the party. The sources detail this aggressive marketing strategy he developed. He wasn't targeting wine connoisseurs, he went straight for the college kids.
The ones who don't care what it tastes like as long as it does the job.
Exactly. But he was innovative. He didn't just put ads in newspapers, he created the Jagerettes.
The Jagerettes.
Models. He hired teams of attractive young women, dressed them in branded gear, and they would just walk into bars and start buying rounds for everyone.
No way.
Yes. Imagine you're a college student, you're at a bar, and suddenly a team of people walks in and just hands you a free shot. You're not analyzing the flavor profile, you're cheering. He created a social phenomenon.
He brute forced the popularity.
He also introduced those tap machines, the ones that sit on the bar and keep the liquid ice cold.
Oh, I know them. They glow orange and have that ominous hum.
That was strategic. By serving it ice cold, it numbed the taste buds a little, making it more palatable. But visually, it secured real estate right there on the bar counter. You could not miss it.
So Jägermeister takes off. He's making money. He's successful.
He is. He's a wealthy guy in New York. But he wasn't satisfied. Jägermeister was a volume game. It was a party drink. It wasn't prestigious. And remember, Sidney Frank was an older man by the 90s. He wanted a legacy.
And this brings us to the mid-90s, the vodka market.
Yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but back then, wasn't Absolut just crushing everyone?
Completely. Absolut was king. Their marketing was art. You remember the bottle shape ads?
Why can't?
So Sidney Frank looked at Absolut, and he saw a gap. He saw that while Absolut was premium, there was no ultra premium.
But hold on, vodka is legally defined as being odorless and tasteless. It's ethanol and water.
Yeah.
How do you make an ultra premium version of something that is supposed to have no character?
That is the multi-billion-dollar question. And Frank's answer is my favorite part of this entire deep dive. The source quotes him saying, the value was not in the liquid, but in the image.
That sounds incredibly cynical.
It is cynical, but it's also deeply observant. He said, it's not because it's better, it's because it looks better. He realized people weren't buying vodka, they were buying a prop for their social lives.
So how do you build that prop? In 1997, he launches Grey Goose. What was the checklist for making it look better?
First, get out of Eastern Europe. Vodka is traditionally Russian or Polish. Frank decided to make his in France.
But France is wine and cognac.
That's the point. France signals luxury to the American brain. We associate France with Louis Vuitton, champagne, fine dining. By producing it in the cognac region, he instantly borrowed all that cultural classiness.
Okay, that's smart. So it's French. What else?
The bottle? He designed it to be frosted glass, very elegant.
Yeah.
But here's the genius design choice. He made the bottle tall.
Just tall.
Too tall for the standard well shelves in a bar.
Wait, I see what you mean. If it doesn't fit in the well where all the cheap stuff is.
The bartender has to put it on the top shelf.
Yeah.
He physically forced his product to be top shelf liquored just by the dimensions of the glass.
That is wildly clever. It's like hacking the physical infrastructure of a bar.
But the biggest hack of all was the price. And this is where I want to just stop and look at the economics for a second, because what he did really defies standard logic.
Usually, if you're the new kid on the block, you undercut the competition, right?
Yeah.
You come in a little cheaper to get people to try it.
Normal logic says yes. But Frank understood something called a Veblen good.
A Veblen good. Okay, break that down for us non-economists.
So for most things, let's say socks, if the price goes up, people buy fewer of them. But a Veblen good is a luxury item where the demand actually increases as the price goes up.
Because the high price is the feature.
Exactly. Think about a Rolex versus a Casio. They both tell time. In fact, the Casio might be more accurate. But you don't buy a Rolex to know what time it is. You buy it to tell other people, I can afford a Rolex. The price is the signal.
So Frank looks at Absolut.
And he sees Absolut is selling for about $17 a bottle. So he decides to launch Grey Goose at $30.
Double the price.
Almost double.
But that's so risky. If I'm a customer in 1997 and I see a bottle I know and love for 17 bucks and some new French vodka I've never heard of for 30, why would I buy the expensive one?
Because you're at a club, you're trying to impress a date or your friends or a client. If you order the $17 vodka, you look standard. If you order the $30 vodka, you look like a high roller. The high price tag actually reassured people that it must be the best.
It costs more, so it must be better.
It's the oldest trick in the book, and we just fell for it hook, line, and sinker.
So did it work right away, or was it a slow burn?
It was explosive. In 1997, they sold practically nothing. 7 years later, they were selling over 1 million cases a year in the US alone.
That is a rocket ship.
It became the badge of the VIP room. You couldn't watch a rap video or go to a high-end lounge in the early 2000s without seeing that frosted bottle. He didn't just capture market share, he created a whole new category. Super premium vodka.
Okay, so now we're in 2004. Sidney Frank is 84 years old. The brand is massive. And this brings us to the exit.
The exit to end all exits. Bacardi, the giant spirits conglomerate, comes knocking. They needed a luxury vodka to compete. They didn't have one. And
Frank is ready to sell.
He is. Now keep in mind, this company is essentially 7 years old. Sidney Frank sells Grey Goose to Bacardi for, you ready for it? $2.2 billion cash.
2.2 billion with a B.
And there was another $300 million in earnouts based on future performance. So the total deal value was closer to $2.5 billion.
That is staggering. I mean, for a company that didn't even own a distillery. Wait, did they own the distillery?
They contracted mostly everything. He built a brand, not a manufacturing empire. He sold the idea of Grey Goose.
It's honestly inspiring, but it also makes you wonder about the man himself. You get that kind of money at 84. What do you do with it? You can't exactly take it with you.
This is where the story shifts from a business case study to something a bit more human. Because Sidney Frank did not just hoard the cash.
What did he do?
Well, first, he looked at his employees. He had about 200 people working for him.
Okay.
He gave them all bonuses, but not the here's a turkey for Thanksgiving kind of bonus. He took a massive chunk of the sale proceeds and just distributed it. The sources say that even the administrative staff, the secretaries, got checks for over $100,000.
Can you imagine that day at the office? You're just answering phones, doing your job, and your boss hands you a check that pays off your mortgage.
It changed lives instantly. And for the executives who'd been with him for a long time, the checks were in the millions. He recognized that while he had the vision, they did the work.
That is so rare. I feel like we usually hear about the CEO taking the golden parachute and the employees getting laid off.
It is rare, and he didn't stop with the employees. Remember Brown University?
The school he had to drop out of because he was broke.
He went back to them, and he said, essentially, I don't want any other kid to have to leave because they can't pay. He donated over $100 million to Brown specifically for scholarships.
That is the ultimate full circle moment.
It really is. The place that rejected him, well, not rejected him, but the place he couldn't access became the biggest beneficiary of his success.
It's almost like he was settling an old score, but in the most generous way possible.
He was cleaning up his past.
So Sidney Frank passes away in 2006, right? Just 2 years after the sale.
Yes, at age 86. He really sprinted through the finish line. He built the brand, sold it, gave away a chunk of the money, and then he checked out.
What a way to go.
Yeah.
But what about Grey Goose? Is it still the it vodka?
It's still huge. The luxury market is more crowded now. You've got Tito's, Belvedere, Ketel One, but Grey Goose is still a titan. In 2023, they sold 4.2 million cases globally.
4.2 million cases.
That's roughly 50 million bottles. It's a massive revenue generator for Bacardi. In fact, Bacardi as a whole reported revenues of $5.3 billion in March 2025. Grey Goose is a big, big part of that engine.
And it all started because an old man looked at a shelf and thought, I can sell this for double.
It really validates his entire theory. We like to think we are rational consumers. We like to think we buy things because of craftsmanship or utility. But Sidney Frank proved that often we are buying the feeling.
The signal.
We are buying the signal. He knew that if you put a velvet rope around something, people will line up to get in.
It makes you look at your own credit card statement a little different.
You should.
I'm thinking about the coffee I bought this morning. Was it actually better coffee, or did I just like the logo on the cup?
Or the sneakers you're wearing? Or the phone in your pocket? Are you paying for the tech, or are you paying to be the kind of person who owns that phone?
That is the uncomfortable question of the day.
It is. Sidney Frank answered it to the tune of $2 billion.
Well, on that note, I'm going to go home and critically evaluate every single brand in my pantry.
Good luck with that.
Thanks for diving in with us today. Sidney Frank, the billion-dollar late bloomer. It proves it's never too late to start, and maybe it's never too late to just double your prices.
See you next time.
Catch you on the next deep dive.